New on CBC Gem this month, Wes Anderson's magnum opus film, The Grand Budapest Hotel, featuring a star-studded ensemble cast and Ralph Fiennes as famed hotel concierge Monsieur Gustave H. Watch as he and his protege Zero attempt to clear his name after being framed for a murder. Winner of 4 Academy Awards. Watch The Grand Budapest Hotel for free starting January 3rd on CBC Gem.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere.
This is CBC News. We're at -5 with cloudy skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. The city of Winnipeg is backing away from a plan to change the way it does snow clearing. The CBC's Cameron McLean explains the about-face.
This year's budget included a pilot project to raise the threshold for triggering the first residential snowplow from 10 centimeters to 15. Winnipeg Mayor Scott Gillingham says he's heard more negative feedback about that idea than anything else in the budget. And so, Public Works Chair Janice Lukes is bringing forward a motion today to scrap the plan. Snow clearing has been one of the major drivers of increased costs to the city. It's facing a deficit of more than $20 million, and with nothing left in the reserve fund, the city is looking for ways to cut back spending. Gillingham says the city has among the best snow clearing operations in Canada, but this change was just too much for Winnipeggers to take. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And Mayor Gillingham agrees something needs to be done to make vacant and derelict buildings more attractive to developers. Yesterday, the vacant Sutherland Hotel burned down on Main Street. The mayor says buildings like that and others are potential for housing. Gillingham says he's pulled together a so-called working table of nonprofits, social agencies, city departments, and developers to find solutions.
To say, what would it take for you to develop here? What can the city do and assist with to make it more attractive, this area more attractive for development? I really think all of these areas represent potential to transform a neighborhood.
Gillingham says Winnipeg has around 700 vacant buildings. He says that's too many, especially when there's a dire need for housing. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is fine-tuning his attacks on the Liberals.
And then there's the jobs tax.
With several candidates for Liberal leadership saying they'd do away with the consumer tax on carbon, Poilievre is adding a new slogan.
In the budget of last year, Chrystia Freeland announced a capital gains tax hike. Now 66% of investment gains will be taxed. This tax will cost 400,000 jobs. I will axe the Liberal jobs tax.
Poilievre has repeatedly asked if he would be willing to put export tariffs on oil and gas heading to the United States. That would be a way to push back on the U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods. He did not answer the question. It appears former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney, meanwhile, will enter the federal leadership race today. A formal announcement is expected in Edmonton, which Carney considers his hometown. Janice McGregor has more.
Launching a political bid, well, that's all about storytelling. So yes, he's headed up a central bank in 2 G7 economies, and yes, he moves in powerful circles, lives in a posh Ottawa neighborhood now, but he was born in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories. His dad once ran unsuccessfully for the Liberals in Edmonton in Pierre Trudeau's day. He grew up in the city's hockey rinks, still apparently cheers for the Oilers. So in the days leading up to officially putting on the Liberal jersey, there he is lacing up his hockey skates on Instagram, checking out the ice conditions on the Rideau Canal last weekend. But if Carney was hoping to run in the only Edmonton seat currently held by a Liberal, well, that gets awkward because Randy Boissonneau was out on social media yesterday announcing he intends to run again. And Boissonneau's endorsing Chrystia Freeland. Janice McGregor, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Israeli cabinet is expected to vote on the Gaza ceasefire and hostage deal tomorrow. Last-minute hurdles caused a day of delay in the implementation of the agreement. Outgoing U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken remains confident the ceasefire will come into force as planned.
We've worked to broker a deal that would bring hostages home, that would stop the fighting, that would surge humanitarian aid to people who so desperately need it, that would create the space to conclude a permanent ceasefire. We now have that, and we expect implementation of the agreement to begin on Sunday.
Earlier, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Hamas was not honoring certain elements of the deal. Hamas officials deny those claims and say the group was fully committed to the agreement. One of India's biggest Bollywood celebrities has survived a violent stabbing attack. Saif Ali Khan was injured in a fight with an intruder who broke into his home overnight. Salima Shivji has the details.
He's out of danger now and recovering in an ICU bed in hospital. But Bollywood star Saif Ali Khan had a big scare after he was stabbed repeatedly by an intruder who managed to get into his home in a ritzy area of Mumbai at around 2 in the morning. Saif Ali Khan is from a very prominent celebrity family. He and his wife, superstar Kareena Kapoor, are considered Bollywood royalty. The knife used to attack him was lodged in Khan's spine, and he needed to undergo surgery to have it removed and to repair leaking spinal fluid. The actor had 6 stab wounds with 2 deep ones on his neck and arm. The doctor treating him confirmed. Mumbai police are investigating and believe this was a botched burglary attempt. Police reportedly have some 20 teams looking into the incident, trying to track down the suspect. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Delhi.
And that is your CBC News for Winnipeg. Taking a look at the forecast. In Winnipeg, a chance of flurries this afternoon, a low around -2 degrees. Brandon, a high of -1 with a chance of flurries. Dauphin, a few flurries, a high of -1. Flin Flon, you have a snowfall warning this afternoon, a high around -4 degrees. Thompson, you're looking for periods of snow and a high around -6. And on the bay in Churchill, a high of -13 with light snow at times. Right now, you're listening to CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM.
Good afternoon, Manitoba. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk. Good to be with you. Happy Thursday. Well, coming up this hour on the show, are you finding it tough to keep up with inflation in the cost of living? A new survey says almost half of Canadians say those are the biggest financial challenges on the minds of Canadians. How are you trimming your household budget? Where are you cutting back on costs? How's that working out for you? Call us on our call-in conversation after 12:30. Also this half hour on the show, a group of high school students in Brandon want to know how much microplastics make their way from the Assiniboine River into plants, and they're getting help from a very expensive scientific instrument that costs $1 million a day to use. We're going to hear more about that. But first, here on Radio Noon, for years, Muslims living in Morden would have to drive to Winkler to pray at a mosque. But now that's changed. A new mosque has opened within a building in downtown Morden, and Faizan Nasser and Rubaiyat Zaman played a big role in making it happen. They're the co-founders of the Pembina Valley Islamic Society. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to start with you, Faizan. So what was it like, I'm curious, for that first time, because you're a Morden resident, when you got to pray in the new mosque that you helped build in Morden?
Thank you for having us. Okay, it was a great feeling. It was very divine and emotional feeling the day when we prayed first time in this mosque. And this was a long-awaited event for our Muslim community in Morden to have our own mosque where our kids and our families can go for the religious events and we can pray 5 times.
How big of a need is there for a mosque in Morden? How big is the community around the area?
Because of the immigration program in Morden, and it grows in last couple of years, like the Muslim population grows with a good pace. So the demand of definitely there was a demand because Muslim families has no close place to go for worship. So that's why it was a very needed place for our families. And we have seen a lot of growth coming in the last 2 years in terms of immigrants. And now we see more and more families coming every year. So definitely it will be a very good addition in our community.
Rubaiyat, for you, how much work was it to get this mosque up and running?
Frankly, it was not a lot. So we have this place ready. And then we just had to repaint it, just renovate a bit. We're just waiting for the carpet at this moment. So the carpet will be shipped. We got the news that carpet will be shipped tomorrow. So it will be ready for inauguration within, we are hoping like end of Jan or like early February. And just add to Faizan's last message, like we have around 150 families, Muslim families in just in Morden area, and in the Pembina Valley region, I think we're close to 300.
Wow, it's growing so fast.
Yeah.
I know, Faizan, leading up to this too, I know you need council approval to get this up and running. What was that like? How much community buy-in was there to make this happen?
Faizan, you can
initially it was just both of us. Okay, so because we were trying to figure out the appropriate space for the mosque, and it took us some time. And when we got the keys that day, we announced, and it was like a celebration in our community that day. Approval also was it was a very smooth process. Okay, we don't have any adverse remark from any of the community member, and the council and Nancy Panner, the mayor of Morden, she supported us in that. We are very thankful to all of the council members and the mayor for helping us. And after this, everything goes well. Our neighbors, our friends, our families are supporting and contributing in the development of the mosque.
And now that the mosque has been open for a little while here, what are you both hearing from families who are coming to pray there?
This is a very good question, because some of our friends who were newcomers here, and they told us that they were thinking to move from Morden because there is no mosque, and they cannot, they don't want to stay where there is no mosque, because they need to have their kids going to the mosque, as we pray 5 times a day. So the moment they heard this news that there is going to be a mosque in Morden, okay, they changed their plan, and that comment was itself very appreciating for us, and this is how the community is feeling. They're very happy about it.
And I know that the mosque is not just in any community, whether it's here in Canada, elsewhere, is not always just a place to pray. It's often a community hub as well. What role has the mosque played now that it's there for the Muslim community and Morden in general?
See, the importance of mosque is, itself, in especially rural community like Morden, it's too much, because it's not just a place of worship. It's a place where all the families can get together, and we are not just open to the Muslim families. In our events like Eid, we would love to invite our non-Muslim friends also to celebrate with us, like we celebrate with them in Christmas. So this is just like a community center, education center for our kids. We have already started bi-weekly classes for our kids, which is we call halaka. In this, we are teaching them history of Islam, ethics, and Quranic education.
Before I let you both go here, I know you're called the Pembina Valley Islamic Society. So you have a mosque in Winkler, one in Morden. What other communities do you think could use a mosque in the coming months or years?
We have Manitou actually just left to Morden. So I'm hearing like there's 1 or 2 families over there. Then we have Altona and Carmen as well. So our vision is actually, so now all the mosques that we have in this region, they're in a rented place. So they are kind of like temporary. So our vision is to actually have a permanent place for the mosque. So that's how this has been formed, because if we were to live here, we cannot have a mosque in a rented place for a very long time, because it's very costly. So we need to have a permanent place for worship and for the community.
Having a rented mosque in a rented place is just a starting point, and we are now planning to find appropriate land to build a bigger facility where we can have the recreational facilities. We can have a bigger mosque and a shelter for people who need, immediate help, and a proper classrooms for education. This is our next plan, and we are working on this. And right now, we are working on with the city to have land for cemetery for the Muslim graveyard.
And that bigger building that you're hoping to build, would that be in Morden, or where would that be ideally?
We are thinking to locate it in some central location, which is easily accessible to the nearby communities like Winkler and like Morden.
But we ideally want this to be on Morden because the thing is, if we see the population, like Morden has more Muslim population than any other place. So it's actually convenient if the mosque is in Morden. So that's how we are thinking.
Well, Rubaiyat, Faizan, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Bye.
Faizan Nasser and Rubaiyat Zaman are co-founders of the Pembina Valley Islamic Society. The new mosque just opened in Morden.
Be an Iron Man and curl. No, not your hair. This is curling on the frozen ice of the Assiniboine River. Ironman Outdoor Curling Bonspiel is back February 7th to 9th. Form a team, embrace the winter with one hand, a rock with the other, and join the Ironman Outdoor Curling Bonspiel, sponsored by CBC. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
12:15 now on Radio Noon. I'm Corey Funk. And still to come on the show, a new survey says almost half of Canadians say inflation and the cost of living continue to be their biggest financial challenges. So how are you cutting back on spending? We want to hear from you on our call-in conversation coming up at 12:35. Also, just ahead here on Radio Noon, it costs roughly $1 million per day to use a special scientific instrument in Saskatchewan, but a group of high school students in Brandon will get to use it for free, and they're hoping it will tell them more about how microplastics make their way from the Assiniboine River into plants. That story coming up just ahead here. But right now, let's take a look at your weather conditions. Enjoy this warm weather for now because there is a winter storm watch in effect for much of the Red River Valley. That includes here in Winnipeg, but also parts of the Interlake like Selkirk, Gimli, Stonewall. Also west of Winnipeg like Portage la Prairie, Headingley, also east Dugald, Beausejour, south Morden, Steinbach, areas like that. It's because an Alberta Clipper is going to affect the Red River Valley. And it's going to start Friday morning, and that's going to bring in some strong winds and reduce visibility, so that will impact the commute tomorrow morning for sure, especially if you are planning to hit the highways. Those wind gusts may be as much as 90 kilometers per hour. So just heads up, if you are planning to hit the highways tomorrow morning, it may be a hazardous drive. We'll have coverage on that throughout the day here on Radio Noon, but also on your local news and your local radio programming. Well, next here on the show, cilantro. It's a divisive herb. You either love it or hate it. But for one group of students, it's a crop they're growing to learn more about microplastics. Once it's grown, the Crocus Plains Regional Secondary School students in Brandon plan to put that cilantro under a very expensive piece of scientific equipment. It's called a Canadian Light Source Synchrotron. It's located at the University of Saskatchewan, and it is costly to use. It would cost an average company about $1 million for a day of use, and they're hoping it will tell us more about how microplastics in the Assiniboine River impact plant life in our province. Christopher Sarkonic is the physics teacher overseeing the project, and Poojan Acharya is a grade 12 student at Crocus Plains. Good afternoon to you both.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So
Great to be here.
Yeah, good to have you both here. So Poojan, I want to start with you. So just kind of tell us a little bit how this, about the cilantro you're growing and how the experiment you're doing works.
Yeah, for sure. So what we've done is we've taken 3 different main water samples. So we have our distilled water, which is supposed to be the perfect growth. So it should have the best growth, and it's what we were going to be comparing results to. We have the tap water, which is more like a relatable one. We all drink mostly tap water. We grow plants maybe with tap water if we're doing grows at home. So that's going to be kind of the most interesting one for us, I think. And the Assiniboine is supposed to be the dirtiest one, the one with the most microplastics, the most heavy metals, and that's what we're assuming. And then when we find the results, we'll be comparing the 3 groups and see all the interesting things we could find.
And it's this fancy synchrotron that's going to tell you what the level of the microplastics and heavy metals are in the plant. Is that right?
Yes, so it'll be doing that. We'll also be using heavy metals as a way of finding microplastics. There's been research that shows that microplastics tend to absorb certain heavy metals, for example, like cadmium. So we'll be searching for those specifically, and maybe when there's higher concentrations of microplastics, we'll see a correlation again with higher concentrations of heavy metals.
So what's your working hypothesis here overall?
For sure. So yeah, our hypothesis is that the Assiniboine water will be the worst to grow with, as in the health of the plants won't be the best, and it'll have the highest quantity of these microplastics, of these heavy metals, and that the distilled water is going to be pristine, completely clear, or near completely clear. Obviously, even in our own project, we've had problem with isolating things from plastic. Everything you do is with plastic.
Right.
So even trying to find sources of distilled water, things like that, have been difficult.
So Christopher, to you now, or Mr. Sarconic, what could some of the implications be if your hypothesis proves correct, that the Assiniboine water used to water the cilantro is full of, microplastics, heavy metals, and makes its way into the plant?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we're looking at is kind of a question that that this whole project was born out of was, the students were seeing talk of microplastics in the news and things like that, and wondering, well, okay, like if we're getting research now that shows that most humans have some degree of microplastics in them that they've consumed and have accumulated and things like that, then okay, where is it coming from? How's it getting to us? So, could it be from water supply? And so if we investigate tap water and discover microplastics, then we might find, that might be a source that they're not getting filtered out. If we're finding that it's coming potentially from food supply, like in our case with the cilantro, if the cilantro is uptaking the microplastics, then I mean, if we think of, potentially farmers that are using, say, Assiniboine River water for irrigation purposes, they might be introducing microplastics into the food supply. And then we're also trying to see, well, what do those microplastics have an effect on? So does it affect the growth of the plants? Does it affect their overall health and things like that?
So it's one thing for a class experiment, grow a bunch of cilantro, water it with these things, then be like, take a little bite and be like, this tastes like microplastics. But you actually managed to you're going to Saskatchewan, you're going to go to this very fancy laboratory. I looked at pictures of it. It's like, it looks real deal. And you're going to put it under this very expensive beam that would cost $1 million to use for a day. It's called beam time in the science world, I hear. How did you score that kind of beam time?
It's a very interesting process. I started trying to get this sort of project up and running in our school a few years ago. I'd started teaching physics at the time, and I wanted to offer some really unique opportunities for our students. I had the privilege of going to an international teacher program at CERN, which is the world's largest synchrotron particle accelerator, and seeing the Large Hadron Collider there, and learning about what they do with it, and all the sort of stuff that they analyze, and how they learn about the history and fate of the universe, and how they've even used it to cure cancers, and finding out that we have one here in Canada that isn't quite the same size, but it's used for a lot of really cool purposes, like trying to discover what things are made out of, and being able to do analysis of which elements are present in certain materials. I think a previous Beamline group of students did an analysis of asphalt, looking at how the recipes for certain roads have gone by the wayside over the years. Well, what makes a road last, and what sort of components does it have? So they would analyze that. During COVID, they analyzed the COVID virus protein to try and figure out what the shape and structure of it was, in order to develop treatments for it, medicines that would fight it effectively. So learning about all this, and then I found out that they have a student outreach program called Students on the Beamline, where they take this amazing piece of equipment, that's normally used for research purposes and things like that, and they offer time to high school student groups to be able to use it.
Poojan, how big of a deal is it for you to be part of a project like this?
It's honestly huge. I'm a really big project guy, so this is just like my bread and butter. Every day I walk into my physics class and I check, first thing I do, open the fume hood, because they're in a little fume hood, check up on the plants, check the humidity, see where the temperature's sitting, like see how they're looking today. And it's just an everyday thing.
What do you think it's going to be like when you get to walk into that like big fancy lab for the first time? Are you gonna kind of like get like a little starstruck?
I'm gonna get geeky about it. It's gonna be so cool. We get to do a really cool tour of the actual like instrumentation and stuff they use. Go through like labs and stuff and like actually get to work in them. So it's just gonna be like so cool. I'm super excited for it.
Have you had any...
The students actually get to do the job of the scientists and even put the samples into the beam line and everything else. It's truly a one-of-a-kind experience.
But up till then, there's a lot of riding on this cilantro staying alive. Have you had any like weird dreams about cilantro yet? Like that's a little scary.
Yeah, we've been doing really good, honestly. We've had a couple scares, but we've really worked on problem solving and working together to get through those problems pretty well. Like over the winter break, we weren't able to come in, and after we came back, the plants were a little, they're kind of on the edge. They weren't completely dead or anything, but it was a little bit of a scare. But we went through it, fixed a couple issues. Like we had a humidity problem. It was really dry in here, so we bought a humidifier. So yeah, and just we've been working on things like that, and I'm hoping they won't die, not this batch, but we might get a chance to do a second batch. So that'll be cool.
And Poojan, when do you actually get to go to the lab and get these results?
We're planning on going in May. We were originally scheduled for February, but they were doing some upgrades and timelines got moved. But this is actually like a blessing in disguise for us because it gives us more time to do different growth cycles. If we want to expand and do maybe some different type of sampling, we could do that as well. We have the time for it now.
Well, that's exciting. And before I let you go here, Poojan, I'm guessing I'm not the first person to ask you this year, but what do you want to do when you graduate? I'm guessing science?
Yeah, I plan on doing electrical engineering after high school.
Well, this sets you up pretty good in terms of resume, I'm guessing, hey?
Oh, yeah, for sure it does.
Great. Well, congratulations to you both. I'm looking forward to hearing about the results. We'll have to have you on in May when you guys find out what happened to the cilantro. So excited to hear about that.
Awesome.
Okay, have yourselves a good rest of your day. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. You have a great day too.
Poojan Acharya is a grade 12 student at Crocus Plains Regional Secondary School in Brandon, and Christopher Sarkonic is the physics teacher overseeing the project. Well, 12:27 right now, and the Canadian Music Hall of Fame will be inducting Lorena McKennett at this year's ceremony. And the Celtic singer-songwriter originally from Morden, Manitoba, also became a member of the Canadian Songwriter Hall of Fame in 2023. She'll be inducted alongside artists such as Dan Hill, Maestro Fresh Wes, and Sum 41 this spring. And from her 1997 album, The Book of Secrets, this is Lorena McKennett with The Mummer's Dance on CBC Radio 1.
Springtime of the year, when the trees are crowned with leaves, when the ash untook and the birch anew, undressed in ribbons fair, when I was called the breathless moon in the blue veil of the night, the shadows of the trees appear amidst the lantern lights. We've been running all the night.
Originally from Morden, Manitoba, that's Lorena McKennett with the Mummers Dance. She's going to be inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame later this year. Well, still to come here on Radio Noon, a new survey says almost half of Canadians say inflation and the cost of living continue to be their biggest financial challenges. How are you cutting back on spending? We're opening up the phone lines after 12:35. That's coming up after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at -4 with cloudy skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. The city is scrapping the new snow plowing proposal after many Winnipeggers gave it a cold shoulder. This year's budget included a pilot project to raise the threshold for triggering the first residential snowplow. The city wanted to try raising the threshold from 10 centimeters of snow to 15 centimeters of snow. But Mayor Scott Gillingham says he heard a lot of negative feedback about the idea. Now a motion is expected today to scrap that plan. The city is facing a $20 million deficit, and snow clearing is a major driver of increased costs for the city. Also today, Mayor Gillingham agreed more needs to be done to get buildings like the Sutherland Hotel occupied. That vacant hotel on Main Street went up in flames yesterday. Gillingham says there's a need for housing in the city. He said the Sutherland and other vacant buildings, especially on Main Street, have potential to become housing. So Gillingham says he's working to find ways to make that area more appealing to developers.
Pulled together a table of not only City of Winnipeg departments, but we've got the private sector, the nonprofit sector at the table as well to try to solve this problem together. Often governments or levels of government will just try to address the issue on their own.
Gillingham says he's asking developers what they need to build housing in the area. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency is recalling a chocolate bar produced by the Swiss company Milka. It says the bar, called Bubbly Alpine Milk, contains hazelnut, which is not declared on the label. The bars were distributed in stores across the country and were sold on Amazon. And finally, celebrated baseball commentator personality Bob Uecker has died.
Vaughn into the windup in his first offering. Just a bit outside. He tried the corner and missed.
That's Uecker from the 1989 baseball comedy Major League. Uecker was a player for just 6 seasons in the 1960s, but went on to a successful 50-year career as a broadcaster and as a comedian. It earned him the nickname Mr. Baseball. In 2003, he was honored by the Baseball Hall of Fame for his lifetime contribution to the game. Bob Uecker was 90 years old. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or you can use the CBC News app.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Back soon.
That is Matt Humphrey at our CBC News desk. Welcome back to Radio Noon. I'm Corey Funk. Good to be with you. We're about to have our call-in conversation. We're curious about how you're feeling about finances these days. Are you cutting back? How are you cutting back? Tell us. Call our listener, not our listener line. Just call us. 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. Our director, Sierra, is standing by to take your calls, and we may put you on air shortly. But first, we have Riley Lachuk, who kind of came into here, and he said, I think I'm about to be the most unpopular person in the province because he's here to tell us about the weather forecast ahead.
Okay, before I get into the weather itself, I want to step back just for a moment and say that on CBC Winnipeg News at 6, if you watch it regularly, you know I do the dog walking forecast.
Okay.
In these times when we're looking at some snow and some wind, I could really use some dog photos.
Okay, there we go.
So talk back at cbc.ca. I could really use some dog photos to show, just to brighten the mood a little bit for what I'm about to get into.
There's going to be photos that are white, and they'll be like, there's a dog behind there somewhere.
Yeah, so talk back at cbc.ca. Tell me who you are, who your pet is, and all that stuff. And we'll try brighten up the next couple of days here.
Good idea.
How about that?
Okay.
So let's start with the watch this morning. So winter storm watch for Winnipeg, the Red River Valley, Portage La Prairie, the Southern Interlake. Not looking at a lot of snow here in Winnipeg, per se. Maybe a couple centimeters by the time we get to later tomorrow, but it'll be the winds. Outside the city, looking at winds northwest 70 gusting 90 even through the afternoon hours tomorrow. Winnipeg, I've got winds northwest 60 gusting 80 through the afternoon. So we're looking at some very strong winds as expected through into the overnight period tonight and really ramping up tomorrow here in the Red River Valley. Snowfall warning, Swan River, the Pas, Flin Flon, Grand Rapids, Barons River into Norway House, looking at up to 20 centimeters of snow in that region, and a blizzard warning for the North Basin of Lake Winnipeg and Lake Winnipegosis, looking at the potential for winds up to 100 kilometers an hour through tomorrow, along with some heavy snow in that region as well. So we're looking at a bit of a mess over the next couple of days for some of us. Some of that snow already starting to move into the western part of the province, sort of the first bands of it through Dauphin, Swan River, Roblin, Russell, even radar picking up a few flurries into the Brandon region right now as well. Expect that to continue making its way into the province of the afternoon. In Winnipeg, I think we do have a slight chance of maybe a few scattered flurries late this afternoon. The bulk of this stays north of the city into the Parkland region through the Interlake as we get through the night tonight. On the backside of this, as we see those northwesterly winds ramp up, we do see in Winnipeg at least a better chance of some snow overnight tonight through into the day tomorrow. So more like periods of light snow overnight into the morning, but very gusty winds along with that. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy with blowing snow with very strong winds, as I mentioned, gusting up to that 80, 90 mark here in the Red River Valley. Swan River, Flin Flon, for example, looking at about 10 centimeters of snow if we're talking about accumulation. Places like Grand Rapids, Barons River, up to that 15 to 20 centimeter mark throughout the day, up until about this time on Saturday, so 48 hours out from now. Dauphin, more like 2 to 4 centimeters, 4 to 5 for Gimli on the high end. Winnipeg, I've got us in that 2 to 4 centimeter range. 4 maybe on the high end locally, but looking at some light snow as we get through into the day tomorrow. Winds, I'll very quickly touch on that. We're looking at those winds really ramping up as we start the day on Friday. Winds do stay gusty as we get through the evening hours, even into Saturday morning, looking at winds still staying fairly strong. So this is going to be quite messy, particularly if you have any travel north of the city, but in the open areas, definitely looking at some very strong winds as we get through the day on Friday. Temperature tomorrow afternoon falls to minus 13 by the afternoon hours, minus 22 for Saturday, minus 24 for highs on Sunday. Then we're looking at another cold one on Monday, still minus 25 before we start to moderate a little bit by the time we get to about mid next week, Corey. So we're in for some very windy conditions tomorrow, followed by a sharp drop in our temperatures back to below seasonal.
Way to kill the buzz there,
I know.
Riley.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. You're just doing your job.
It's
okay?
winter. It's January.
Don't send them any angry emails.
It's
just
January in Manitoba.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Riley.
You're welcome.
That is Riley Lachuk, our CBC weather specialist and climate change reporter. Well, time to start our call-in conversation portion of Radio Noon. Today, we're talking about money. A new poll shows about half of Canadians surveyed say inflation and the cost of living are the biggest financial challenges this year. The TD Bank survey also shows about half of the respondents plan on cutting back on spending. And here in the prairies, actually, the survey found 1 in 3 prairie residents are feeling less positive about their finances in 2025 compared to the last year, with more than half foreseeing inflation and the cost of living being their biggest financial challenges. Also, interestingly, we're saying there's even a generational divide. More younger Canadians plan to cut back on spending compared to boomers. There's no question that the cost of living continues to strain household budgets. And today on our call-in conversation, we want to hear how you're cutting back on expenses, whether it's simply getting rid of a few subscriptions or a lifestyle change like switching up transportation from driving to taking the bus. Are you eating out less, cooking more? Whatever it is, call us and tell us where you're cutting back. Share your story of where you're able to pinch a penny or two. That number to call, 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. You can also text us, 204-588-7355. That's 588-7355. Molly McCracken is the director of the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives here in Manitoba. Hello there.
Hi there.
So in terms of these findings, what's your reaction?
Well, it's not surprising the affordability crisis has been very difficult for a great many people. And people are having to make some tough choices right now. We're seeing that those mortgages that would have been locked in before the interest rates rose. 5-year mortgages are now going to be set to be renewed in this year or next. So mortgage holders will have some tough choices to make if they're going to have to renew their mortgage at, even though the rate did come down, it's still higher than it was when they first negotiated their mortgage, perhaps renegotiate the terms of their mortgage as well. And then if you're a renter, the cost of rent has risen substantially, about 9%, even just in the past year here in Manitoba. So, given that housing is the biggest household expense, often when you're doing a budget, you first look at your mortgage or your rent, then utilities, and then other fixed cost, and then food, and what you can, what is disposable in terms of can adjust to. And I think we're seeing that response in the survey of how people are dealing with the continued pressures, even though interest rates have come down.
204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893 if you'd like to join the conversation. We actually have Shirley on the line here. Hi there, Shirley.
Hey there.
Hey, how are things going for you financially?
Well, broke is broke is broke is broke. Okay. And I knew that I was extra broke. I mean, I've got all my basic needs looked after, and I do work, and my work pay covers everything except for about $5.
Wow. So you're like really right at the edge.
Right at the edge. And I mean, I'm lucky enough. I own my own home. I'm a student, and I do have a job. Right? Mm-hmm. So I knew that it was getting bad for me over the winter break when I was like, oh my God, bus fare went up to $3.35. Mm-hmm. $3.30. Oh my goodness, $3.35. Like, even though that was only a dime, it was massive for me. And then I have not done like a major grocery shop in a while. And over the winter break, I'm like, yes, I can get not just the bread and milk, but I can get like a few extra things. And I was like, $150 for 4 bags. And then when I looked at the receipt, it was, you just saved $46 because I only buy things on sale. So this is what I do. I honestly make massive use of the free groups. And on the free groups, I mean, I do the same thing too. We opened this drink and we don't like it. Anybody want it? Like, that's how I get probably, I don't know, a quarter, maybe less than a quarter of the food that I eat. And then I have no subscriptions. I have no streaming. The only thing I have is the internet, and I need it for school, right? I was telling the producer, I give myself a budget of $15 a month for anything that's not covered. I think I'm going to cry, my goodness. So yesterday I was at Giant Tiger, and I bought a new front door mat, and it cost $10. After tax, it was $11. That's it. I have $4 for the rest of January.
Thanks for sharing that, Shirley.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like that's obviously not a place where you'd like to be. Was it, say 2-3 years ago? Was it like this too, or is this kind of something that you've had?
2-3 years ago, I had a different job, and it was full time, and it paid more, and I wasn't a student, and I didn't pay $150 for 4 bags of groceries. Like, truly, right? And then I had a variable mortgage, so I've been up and I've been down, but just everything, I'm like, do I need that? It's like $6. I probably don't need that. And, honestly, also, even though it's a little bit tight and it's a little bit stressful sometimes, I do super look at this as an opportunity. I grew up in intense poverty, and when I became an adult, I was like, look at me, I'm so rich. But sometimes it's good to be reminded of the best ways to be responsible with your money so that the extra stuff you have, you can goof around with.
Well, Shirley, thanks so much for sharing your experience with us today on Radio Noon. Molly, I mean, that's I imagine Shirley's not alone here. What extent are people kind of focused on this kind of day-to-day cost of living expenses? As suppose, Shirley, I guess, is fortunate enough to have her own home, but that still is, she's still, like, you sounds like she's still paying off her mortgage, right? So there's also these difficult decisions people need to make in terms of making their day-to-day cost of living, but also paying off debt like a mortgage or other things like that, student debt. How difficult is that balance for people that you're hearing?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much, Shirley, for sharing your story. And sounds like you are, doing everything you can, but $15 extra left over after all your basics are covered is hardly anything, particularly if an emergency situation comes up or a big expense, related to whatever comes up. So, I would argue that's hardly a cushion at all. And yeah, we are seeing that here. The minimum wage here in Manitoba is $15.80 an hour. That's not enough to support a family. We do a living wage calculation every year here in Manitoba, and the living wage in Manitoba is $18.35 an hour. And that's just a very bare bones budget, also just covering the essentials, not saving any money for retirement even, or anything else. So yeah, if you're in a part-time job, if you're making just around minimum wage, then you are earning a poverty wage, and it's just simply not enough to support an individual or a family, particularly when we saw food prices rise. Depending what you're buying at the grocery store, meat rose 6.9% just in this last year, dairy 7.4%, bakery goods about 13%, and even though inflation rates are subsiding, the cost of food has not come down, and I don't expect it to come down. And so people are really pinched. I'm at the Canadian Centre for 50% of all earners are most affected by the affordability crisis and are really pinched, like Shirley is, in terms of the rising costs of goods. But the top 60% of earners have done okay and have in fact more disposable income than since before the affordability crisis. So we are seeing a differential impact of the affordability crisis depending on where you are in the income spectrum.
Give us a call if you want to share your story, just like Shirley did. 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. So Molly, you mentioned, living wage, which often I think is in the purview of provincial governments. But there is a federal election coming up sometime this year. In terms of policies and I imagine cost of living is going to be a big election issue. What are some policies that you think could, from a federal level, make life easier for people, that might be worth talking about in this upcoming election cycle?
Yes, well, there are some federal measures that people may have heard of that are new, that are intended to help people and are helping some people. Some people could say they could go further, but they are promising. The Canada Child Benefit, for example, is a benefit that low-income and medium-income families get. It's about, at the maximum level, if you're the lowest income person, you'd get about $650 a month for a child under 6. And so that really helps low-income families. And so I hope people keep asking, during the election cycle, what's the intention of the parties for the Canada Child Benefit? $10 a day daycare is new under this, the last federal government, the current federal government. And that was a huge change for people. If you had an infant in childcare, you would have been paying about $30 a day. A preschooler was paying $20. So now $10 a day is great. However, we need the licensed quality spaces for parents to be able to access. And so we need to finish the job on childcare so there's enough spaces. The Canada Worker Benefit is a federal benefit available to low-income workers through the tax system. And not a lot of people might be aware of it, but that has improved the income transfer for low-income workers. That is helping some people. Things like OAS, old age security, did increase 10% for people over the age of 75 under this federal government. It should have been for everybody 65 and older, but that was an argument in Parliament, but that's a change. The federal government said they're going to make contraception free, and also diabetes drugs and devices. That hasn't actually passed fully yet, so hopefully that doesn't die while they're in this period of transition. The Manitoba government, however, has agreed to free contraceptives, so we'll have that in Manitoba no matter what, and that really helps out low-income folks who need contraception. Dental, the low-income dental, well, that's actually for 2/3 of Canadians who don't already have dental coverage. Currently, it's available to seniors. The plan is to roll it out to adults. It's available to seniors and children. Plan to roll it out to adults. So, we need to see that through. Hopefully, all parties could agree that the Canada Dental benefit is worth ironing out any problems that people have with it and moving forward on. But, I think that's not enough, obviously. I'm also with Make Poverty History Manitoba, which is a coalition that is advocating for good public policy to end poverty. And we need stronger government transfers to support the lowest income families. About 11% of families here in Manitoba live below the poverty line, the lowest poverty line, and there's more just on the cusp. And so we need government benefits to target those most affected by the affordability crisis, to help those families get a hand up a little bit so that they can then break that cycle of poverty and help those kids have the best start in life for the next generation.
Well, Molly, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks so much for your time this afternoon and for your analysis. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
That's Molly McCracken. She's director of the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives in Manitoba.
Still there never seems to be a single penny left for me. That's too bad. In my dreams I have a plan. If I got me a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work at all. I'd fool around and have a ball. Money, money, money must be funny in the rich man's world. Money, 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 always sunny in the rich man's world. All the things I could do if I had a little money. It's a rich man's world. It's a rich man's world. A man like that is hard to find, but I can't get him off my mind. Ain't it sad? And if he happens to be free, I bet he wouldn't fancy me. That's too bad. So I must leave. I'll have to go to Las Vegas or Monaco and win a fortune in a game. My life will never be the same. Money, money, money must be funny in the rich man's world. Money, 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 always sunny in the rich man's world.
That's ABBA with Money, Money, Money. 12:54 now on Radio Noon, and it is time now for our Word Nerd column. And today, it's something presidential because we are only a few days away. On Monday is the inauguration of President-elect Donald Trump. And here's a Word Nerd, Elizabeth Whitney with the story of inauguration.
Some words we use every single day. Other words only come up every 4 years, like Olympic and leap in the context of year, and inauguration, which is getting a lot of airtime right now, given the upcoming presidential inauguration. Donald Trump will be sworn in on Monday, January 20th at the U.S. Capitol.
I watched the inauguration. Loading with the television.
Where do we get that great big word, inauguration? It relates to auger. Not the kind of auger you'd find on a farm or the kind for drilling holes. Auger with 2 U's. Don't worry, I hadn't heard of it either. In ancient Rome, an augur was a person who made predictions based on omens or other signs. It's believed the word came from Latin inaugurare, meaning increase, because the person saw favorable omens as a way of increasing or improving chances of success. In one theory, those omens may even have come from the flight of birds.
With the elevation, this is inauguration. After all the pain and suffering, all the struggle we've been through. After all the searching, wondering what it is that we gon' do. I think I see a brighter day.
Over time, the word inauguration has moved away from things to do with omens and instead has come to mean an official ceremony where something important is formally set in motion. For example, a presidency.
Bill and Heather, our first couple. Student press, homecoming queen. Tipper's cute, Albert's handsome. The in crowd is the winning team.
It's why we also say, as an adjective, inaugural. A word to describe the beginning of something, an institution, activity, or period in office. For CBC Radio, I'm Elizabeth Withy.
That's Elizabeth Withy with her Word Nerd column. Well, we are coming up to the end here of Radio Noon, but Faith Vandal is here in studio to tell us a little bit about what you can expect today on Up to Speed. Hello.
Hello, Corey. We're going to hear more about why the city has decided to back out, to cancel a pilot project that would have seen the city wait until more snow had fallen before residential streets were plowed. The city saying that the public was loud and clear. We heard on Information Radio earlier today, the mayor, Scott Gillingham, saying that the public spoke loud and clear about how they feel about it, and so they're changing their intention to do this pilot. We're going to hear more from the chair of the Public Works Committee, Janice Lukes, coming up on the program. First up at 3 o'clock, just after the 3 o'clock news. And we've been talking about losing old buildings and all of these fires after that Sutherland Hotel fire. We're going to talk about the history of these buildings and what happens when buildings like that disappear. So stay tuned. It'll be a fun conversation.
Looking forward to it. Thank you very much, Faith.
Thank you.
That is Faith Vandal. They're hosting Up to Speed this afternoon from 3 to 6. They'll also be in the host chair here on Radio Noon tomorrow and on Monday. Thanks to everyone who called in today, as well as thank you to the wonderful crew who put together today's show. Our technician is Dylan Longhurst. Our director is Sierra Sanders. Our producer is Wendy Parker. And our YouTube live stream producer is Kevin Nipotebo. Nelly Gonzalez is our show producer, and Leif Larson is our senior producer of audio. I'm Corey Funk, and whatever you find yourself up to today, hope you find yourself doing something you love with the people you love. Coming up on CBC Radio 1, Quirks and Quarks. Have a good one.